I'm not here to solve your problems, all your problems. At least I can listen. And then once that happens, then we'll try to figure out a way out together.
Hi, Noble Community. It's Jean Sugandi here today. And today we have the opportunity to interview two very interesting gentlemen, Patrice and Jerome, who we're going to talk about intercultural issues. So I'll let you gentlemen introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Patrice Tobing. I'm an intercultural enthusiast and I study multicultural communications for many years, and now I'm living in Jakarta, Indonesia.
Hi, my name is Jerome Priatman. I'm half Indonesian and half German. I was born and raised in Berlin, and since 2009 I live here in Jakarta.
Okay, so today the topics of today's discussion is going to be about challenging of moving to a new country, not only expats coming into Indonesia, but also Indonesians going overseas, which creates its own challenges. And I hope that the conversation today is going to be very, very interesting. So why don't we start with you, Patrice? Common misconceptions about expats that are moving into Indonesia. Most people have an idea about what they're going to experience, but in your opinion, what's some common misconceptions?
Based on my experience, most of the time when we want to go somewhere, that we always have this idea that, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. And that have a different meaning everywhere you go, and sometimes that can cause frustration when people are, why are they not treating me like this, and then they don't see that they're being treated the way they're being treated. And I think the best thing to do when you travel overseas is to expect differences instead of expecting similarities. Probably better.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Jerome, when you came, you've been in Indonesia for a while, but what was one of the biggest cultural shocks that you experienced upon arrival that took you by surprise?
I mean, I remember I came 3 days, it was 2009, 3 days before Idul Fitri. Yeah, and then we traveled to my family in Kuningan, I think it was, and it took us 17 hours. Yeah, so I mean, I think the first shock was actually seeing those masses of people. And then I think the first days in Kuningan, it was just not a shock, yeah, but it's so many people came, yeah, like literally every half an hour someone else came to say hello, right? So but I actually liked it. Yeah, so but for me, just the amount of people, the crowd, there was really something that I was not used to in Germany.
Yes, that was something similar what I experienced. But I think my biggest shock was that I was the minority. For the first time in my life, I was the minority, and not everybody around me spoke my language. And so I felt that it was a disadvantage that I couldn't easily communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Most people are coming in here for work, so it's the Indonesian workplace. What do you think is the biggest differences between the Indonesian workplace versus the Western workplace?
The most notable, I think, is in the style of communications. Yeah, when you're dealing with cross-cultural communications and let's say the verbal communications, most of the West usually are very direct in their approach and their communication style, and most of the East are not so direct but have meanings. And then maybe from the West is it's, what is being said is what you're gonna get, and on the East side it's very contextual. So it's I think it's a high context and a low context kind of difference in communication style. And I think that without if you don't know, you might get frustrated in in the way your message is being, either interpreted or how you receive the feedback, and all this can cause a miscommunication. I mean, it's easy to have a miscommunication.
So, Jerome, you coming from Germany, they're known to be very direct communicators.
Yes.
Like you're saying exactly what you're thinking. Coming into this type of preferred communication style where it's quite indirect, how did you adapt?
Oh, it took me years. And I'm still not sure if I already adapted fully, but no, I mean, I'm from hospitality, right? So there you have a very direct communication setup, basically, from top to bottom, and the other thing also in Germany, if I feel like people know the task, you don't have to communicate much. And here I remember I worked on quite big restaurant projects. With one restaurant had more than 100 employees, right? And for me there was something. Also, like, the other thing is that you cannot if you scream, you lost here in this country, my feeling. So if you get angry, they take it very personal. And in Germany, you don't have that, right? So there you really make a clear cut. Okay, that's work, and then like people just accept it.
Yeah.
But here, it's for me, it feels different. Like.
Maybe you could elaborate, Patrice, about how it's received. So you have an expat expert coming in. He's been hired to make changes or to direct a team, and he's very specific at what he's doing, and he's directing with a direct communication style. How is that being received?
Well, but not all, but most of the expats that I have real working experience with, most of them are scientists, on the engineering background, the exact science background, and then most of the time they are here, and they are here dealing with the Indonesian bureaucrats, from whatever backgrounds, and then they have their ways of doing things, right? And this is not this is just a difference in communication style,
right?
From my perspective, it's just a difference in communication style. It's not a matter of right or wrong, right? This is not to blame or that's not to blame. It's just different. And if you can imagine the expert from Europe coming into this country, laying out their work plan in a very direct manner, very linear in a way. That's okay. We need this, and this, right? Mm-hmm. And here's the Indonesians listening to all this, and although maybe the person understands the work plan, but in his mind or her mind, he's also thinking about all the context, right? Then which this wherever need to be work on, and thinking about all the non-science ramifications, if you will, of all this, right? So how do you do that? The danger, I think, is in how open can you be in communicating this, and maybe how the incoming people, how comfortable are they saying that, hey, if this is something okay with you, or if it's not okay in any way, can you please let me know, right? And how comfortable is the other side, the recipient of that message, and saying that, I'm sorry, but can we elaborate on this, without these guys worry about, if I ask this question, he might think that I'm not very smart asking these questions, and without this group here, not thinking that if that guy's saying this, I say, oh, they're not very, smart, and they don't understand what I'm saying,
Right.
I think if we suspend judgment and anticipate differences in our communication style, and maybe we can communicate better, that it's sometimes it's not the message, right? It's how is that message being conveyed and how is that message being understood. So if we can find a way, how do we communicate cross-culturally better, then maybe we can avoid all that misunderstanding.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. Because I see many times Indonesians are following the business protocol that's expected here with respect of the hierarchy, respect of the seniors and whatever, and then withholding true opinions or true feelings. And that's being mistaken for lack of knowledge or lack of participation when actually that's not the case.
Yes.
That's not the case. It's being misread
I
totally.
mean, that's also, I remember also that was one of the first things that I realized is when I told my staff, okay, you have to do like this or like that, many times they would not, maybe literally not understand me, but they would say, yes, sir, right? So, I did really a test one time. So I said, okay, you clean up the table and then you go on the right way to the kitchen, right? And he cleaned up the table and he goes straight left, right? So that's where I found out they will, they always say yes to me, right? So, and that's also something that I think is challenging a lot of expats actually, that they don't dare to ask back or they don't dare to double check basically.
Yeah. It's a shame because it may be a total communication problem. We're expecting the host country to speak the foreign language, firstly, and then secondly, you're dealing with different types of protocol where to challenge a boss or to challenge an opinion is disrespectful. So they don't.
The West say speak up if you don't understand. The East say I'm not going to speak up and make you think that I don't understand you.
Right.
I mean, it's stereotyping on both sides, and not a good thing.
Yes. So we know that this is a problem. It's a problem of communication where it's a direct approach versus an indirect approach. And to the expat, it may be frustrating that my instructions are not being followed or you're not challenging my ideas or whatever it be. So how do we deal with this? What would be the ideal approach for somebody that's coming in tasked with improving a company, changing a company, or making changes? What would be your advice to somebody put in this situation?
This may be it's an interesting issue. Maybe it's easier said than done, but the first thing to do when you communicate cross cultures, suspend all judgment. That's like the most you must have. Suspend judgment, because if you come in, communicate, and you already have this prejudgment, stereotype, whatever, it's not gonna work. Suspend judgment and expect differences, right? Not similarities, but differences. I think if both sides understand this, then maybe the communication can be more transparent. It's okay to explain context. It's okay to ask questions. It's not degrading to ask clarification. It's not lowering your stature in any ways. So if this can be accomplished in the way message is being communicated, I think we can avoid that misunderstanding. But again, sometimes we are so occupied by our stereotype and our prejudgment, and then then it leads to all kinds of issues. And after a while, you forgot what the issue was. You just they're like this and they're like that. It's too much. And most of that is just judgment, actually. So if you can suspend the judgment, be more open, I would say be more open in your communication. Ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay if you do not understand. It doesn't reduce your sophistication of a culture, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I found out that some people think that coming here or going there, they have this thing in their mind, a preset assumption that so that they can be seen as a sophisticated global travelers, that I have an international experience. Well, no. It has nothing to do with that. It's just a span of judgment. Be more open and be more transparent. It has nothing to do with sophistication. It's just ask questions.
Right.
You know.
But I remember, yeah, like when 2009, 10, when my first son was born, when we went to the doctor, to the hospital, yeah, I think in that time it was not common to ask the doctor question, why that medicine, or how do you know that this is basically the diagnosis. So now it's changed, but I remember back in the days there was also something I felt common not to do. Yeah, so if the doctor would tell you that's the diagnosis, that's what you take on the medicine.
Yeah,
just
take
go for
some
it.
Valium and be happy. That's the doctor's. Yeah.
But I mean, this comes down to challenging authority, right, Jerome? Like
Yeah.
you're taught not to challenge the authority, where in the West the mindset is it's okay
It's okay.
Yeah.
to challenge the authority, and I don't think that your idea is the best. Maybe this would be better. Jerome, you've managed big teams of Indonesians, and what are one or two tips that you can share that worked for you?
I mean, I think also it depends really in which sector you work, right? So I mean, like if we talk about construction, if I deal directly with handymans, tukang called here, for me, I think the what I realize is if they see that you know what you're doing, if you gain their respect, then they will basically follow you. Yeah, but if they feel like you don't know anything,
Yeah.
it will be very hard to tell them actually what you want to do.
Trust is a very important. If there is trust, then it's easier to communicate. I mean, that can be universal, but especially in this intercultural communications, if trust is established, and I think it's easier to communicate.
Which takes time.
Yes, unfortunately, that's your challenge.
So give us one or two tips about, okay, I need to build trust with my team. What do I do? Aside from being prove that you do know what you're talking about, you have the expertise.
For some teams, basically, even though I know it's wrong what they're doing, but I basically let them make that mistake. Yeah, if I know, okay, I can absorb it, I can deal with it later. But if I would tell them right away from the beginning, that's not how you should do it, they would not believe it if they would have not failed, right? So sometimes I let them actually fail, and then I show them, okay, this is how you should do it. And then, from there on, they will do it that way. Yeah, but also things that they already did forever, since this is how they do their task, it's very difficult to change and say like, no, you should do it this way now. Yeah. So, but I think it really depends on, like you said, the trust. You have to make them really believe that you know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like, and then actually they really follow you. Yeah? And for me also, if you push someone here in Indonesia, I don't think you will get as much success than if they really, I say, not love you, but if they really respect you, basically, they will go, they will move mountains for you. Yeah, my feeling in Indonesia sometimes.
Yeah. The general mindset is that Indonesians are very interested on how to improve themselves, their country, the situation. Just give them a chance to do it.
Yeah, at least some of it.
Yeah.
But then also one more thing, I think it's what I realize is with some workers, especially I'm a very kind person actually, right? So I'm always that, but I also learned my lesson that you have to keep some sort of barrier between, because once you go over it, you cannot go back anymore. And then it becomes very personal in my eyes for those people, like, okay, but yesterday was okay. Why now you don't let me do that again? Yeah, so that can not only workers but also drivers. But before I always want to treat everyone like family, but now I realize it's better to keep
The structure.
some border between.
Yeah.
Distance.
Yes.
Well, there all the three things that easy stuff, right? Trust, honesty, and change. Easy stuff, right?
Right. Right.
And unfortunately, this is what you need to be able to communicate successfully in intercultural communication. Communication cross borders. You need to establish trust, right? And you need to have honesty, right?
Yeah.
And then you need to change. I mean, all the good stuff. And I always say to my wife, "Why change is so difficult? Change is the only thing constant. Come on." And then she say, "Yeah, but the more you change, the more things stays the same. So it's all the same." This back and forth of the idea of how do you see change? Is change a challenge, or is change something that is necessary to do to evolve?
Right.
Right? Trust. Well, if you don't have trust, how can you gain respect? You have to have trust to have a long-lasting respect.
Right.
And how do you have trust if you do not sow honesty? And how do you sow honesty without worrying about the stereotype? Meaning, hey, if I'm being honest that I don't know, maybe they will judge me as being not that sophisticated. Yeah, it's these three things sounds easy. It's very challenging at every level. And the more we understand, again, suspend judgment. Okay, just suspend judgment, embrace differences, embrace changes. Change if you will, if you have to. It's okay. It doesn't mean you change. That doesn't mean you change and permanently change. You can always go back. You can always go back and forth if you want.
But with implicating change within the company, for example, how important is it to sell the reason on why you want to make the change? How important is it to get your team on board with what you're doing?
Well, I can speak out of my own experience. Yes. So usually we lay out objectives. This is our objectives. And I usually solicit ideas. Okay, what do you guys think we need to do to get to that objectives? Yeah, and then given a chance, they'll come up with all kinds of ideas. We're not short of ideas. There are all kinds of ideas, and my job is just to provide an overview. Like, okay, if we do this, then this might be the challenge, and if we do that, this might be the challenge. So you set, there's no right way or bad way, but it's just that this one think from his or her perspective, this is how you're gonna go to reach that objective. It's a matter of how you go from point A to point B. It's just how, and then you have a healthy discussions. And again, it's easier to do this healthy discussions when you have trust, honesty, and willingness to change and adapt. Again, we may be confronted with one issue, and then we need to change our way of doing this so that we can solve this issue. But in another issue, we might have to go back to the way we did it so that we can solve this issue. Now, context is important.
Sure.
Right? So if you have the openness in communication, the French, the Germans, the Americans can discuss this openly with the Indonesians and find a solution. Okay, this is how we should do this, because this week we will reach the objective of this and that, and just be open, just have that communication. It's just communication. Right. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people think communication, it's not that scientific.
It's important.
Yeah.
Jerome, when you've been in a situation you need to change something, you lacked local knowledge. have you been surprised at your team came out with reasons why they couldn't do things in a certain way or whatever? Like your approach was proven wrong because of local knowledge? Have you experienced that in any way?
No, what I experience is sometimes that in projects, if there was a problem, it was not reported, right? So and I think there was a few big cases that could have been easily solved. Yeah, but because I did not ask how is it going, or I didn't know, right? But then when I found out that okay, it's not done, they told me that's this problem. Right?
Once you discovered it.
Yes, once I asked, they all know there is a problem, but yes, I didn't ask the whole time, right? So, and that's also something that I felt like, okay, that's can be very challenging. Yeah, especially if you have more tasks than only one, right? So, and the other thing is also that even if I give direct instruction, okay, this is how you do it. For example, in the hospitality, I told the hosts, this table is for 4 people, this table 6, 2 people, right? And the next morning, we had an amazing angry guest, red face, yeah, because we had 400 seats and he wanted to sit on the table for 4, but the host insisted, no, you have to take the smaller table, which for me really did not make sense, but that's what I told her the day before, right? And that's also one thing where I realized, okay, for how to deal with that, yeah, because she was not wrong either, yeah, but like logical thinking, yeah, it should have been no problem to pick the seat.
This is a recurring theme, Jerome. Many people that I speak with, that I coach, complain about this, that I wasn't informed until after the fact. How do you deal with it?
Just pray.
No, I mean,
Solve this problem for me, please.
no, I think in a situation like that, yeah, I will actually try to tell them, to encourage them to reach out to me if there's any problem. Yeah. For other projects, what we did is like we organize weekly gatherings where we serve snacks and you know, like we had the village playing some gamelan, and after that, basically, when they're in a more relaxed environment, they would be actually much more open compared to if it's directly on work. Yeah, so I think that's another, but a direct answer I really don't have.
Patrice, this is classic. This is a classic problem that many of my clients have. How do you deal with this?
Yes, it is a classic issue. Again, it's a different in cultural habits, maybe openness. Okay, that's one thing, and you make sure if you feel like you're not getting all of it, then you might explain again to them, right? Say it's okay. I mean, this is a constant learning, right? I mean, this is not gonna happen, you know, just one time. I usually just say it's okay for you to tell me if there is a problem. I'm not gonna reprimand anybody. Right? I'm not gonna downgrade whatever. It is easier, like Jerome said, to know a problem away in advance, so it's not, you know, because if the problem evolves into something bigger, then it's gonna take more resources to solve it. Then if I know from the beginning, it might not take as much, you know, it might be easier to handle. It is easy because you just need a different set of eyes to look into it and say, nah, that's easy. You just do it like this. So sometimes the biggest challenge in this is just not knowing there is other perspective. So if you tell your colleagues, there are different ways of looking at this, There are different ways of how we can go from point A to point B.
Of course.
You just need to talk about it. Then maybe that will encourage people to talk more. Again, being open, build that honesty, trust, and willingness to change. Yeah, all of that. If you practice that, then people will be more willing to tell you if they have a problem. And I usually open with this. I'm not here to solve your problems, all your problems. I'm not here to tell you that I have all the answers, but at least I can listen. At least I can listen. And then once that happens, then we'll try to figure out a way out together.
Right.
And so far that works for me in my environment here.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done when you go outside your environment, by the way. Questioning judgment, questioning how we do things.
Right.
But I think, it also goes really back to the trust that you said at the beginning, right? So,
absolutely,
if there is no trust, I feel they might think if they bring you a bad news, they're the one to blame for it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's also one of the reasons why they prefer to keep quiet.
So change the culture. Change the culture meaning this. I'm not trying to tell you change the culture, but change the culture of if somebody, because that's a culture in itself, a corporate culture, if you will.
Correct.
In which when somebody come and you immediately get blamed for it. We change that culture.
Right.
This is when you come to me with these issues, I'm not gonna reprimand you in any ways.
Yes.
All right.
So the first thing is permission to bring the problem to me.
Yeah.
And second, your reaction.
True.
And what's done once that problem is known.
Yes.
So those two issues will probably greatly help how many problems you get.
Yeah.
Yes, and then
brought
also
to you.
also how you react. Yeah, like if you're new in your job and there's someone coming to you, come with a problem, if you explode, he will never come again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. You've just closed the door on the problem.
And everybody who watch your reaction will also not come to you.
Right.
Yeah, so I think how you react is also very crucial.
Right.
In terms of that.
So appreciative of the information
Yeah.
Yes.
and your reaction on how are we going to solve this? How are we going to move forward from this?
Yes.
Is how I would suggest to deal with this.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Worst come to worst, just say complaint department opens only in July.
Okay, gentlemen, Indonesia is known to be very sopan santun, filled with politeness. The Indonesians have a reputation of being polite people. So what would you suggest if I have an incoming expat, they need to know some degree of etiquette? What are some of the things that they for sure should know about?